Hello. So today I'm super excited. I'm going to introduce you to Margot Haglund, who is going to become one of our associate coaches and is going to be delivering our influential leadership program for women in the States. So if you've been one of our clients and not been able to access influential leadership for women because the timings just didn't work, now we have the opportunity to offer you that amazing coaching with the amazing Margot. So I thought I'd take some time today to introduce Margot so that you can really get to know her, really understand where she's coming from and how she helps her and our clients become really, really incredible communicators, leaders, and speakers. So welcome, Margot. I am so excited to have you as part of our team.
Thank you, Emma. It is just such a pleasure to be here, and I'm thrilled to be onboarding with you.
Amazing. So I'm going to ask Margot a bunch of questions about her, about how she got into voice coaching, what she thinks all the important aspects of voice coaching are, and how she really, really impacts on clients. So you can get to know her and understand where she comes from as a coach. So Margot, first of all, how did you get into voice coaching? Where did you come from? How did it all happen?
Well, that is a fun story, Emma, because I actually have a background in performance. And I started my life as a figure skater. I was a competitor, a coach, and a professional performer for Disney on Ice. And it was through Disney that I not only connected with my love of performance and connecting with audiences, but I discovered voice coaching in my time with Disney. We had a fabulous media trainer that would work with us for PR engagements and interviews, which we delivered globally on our tours. And I thought, what is this fabulous career? I realized that I had this passion for translating how to connect with audiences on the ice through your communication off the ice to build connection, build rapport. And I discovered that there were so many overlapping elements and techniques that would work for both. And so that ignited the seed of my passion for voice coaching. I also have a background in psychology. I have a BA in psych, and I had a brief career in luxury event design. So that was kind of the business component of my background. And when the pandemic hit, like so many others, my industry ended. We paused for a while, and I found myself reconnecting with that passion for helping others communicate with confidence, communicate with empowerment. And I discovered this fabulous program at the Royal Central School of Speech and Drama. I moved to London and received my master's as a voice and communication coach. So I'm so thrilled to be in this work now where I blend my background in elite competition and performance on this artistic level with helping business professionals who are also incredibly high performing communicate at their most confident, their most empowered, and their most connected level.
I absolutely love that. I love the squiggly career. I resonate with your squiggly career. I also have had a squiggly career, but I love the fact that you've got this background in performance, like you say, elite performance. It's not just any performance, but elite performance where you've got to be on point every single day. You understand the psychology of humans and communication, which I think is really, really powerful. And you've had a stint in business, because at the end of the day, when we're working with women in business, really that's what we're doing. We're trying to understand who they are as human beings and also what they want from their human beings that they're interacting with. Obviously, they've got to perform. So we need that understanding of business. And we really want to be making sure that's super consistent, just like your elite performance. So I love the fact that you've got all of that. And you brought all of that in throughout your career. I think it's incredibly helpful. I'd love to understand what you believe are the key challenges that women in business, so whether that's in their own business, so they're an entrepreneur, or in the corporate space, really struggle with when it comes to communicating like a leader in that really consistent fashion. So it doesn't matter who they're talking to. They could be communicating up the chain of command or down or across. But what do you think their major challenges are in terms of the kinds of clients that you're currently seeing?
Absolutely. Well, I'm privileged to work with brilliant women all the time who innately just bring to the table just so many incredible qualities. And I think I see that answer to this question in three different categories. The first is mindset. I work with a lot of clients who have the innate credibility, they have the credentials, but their sense of what we call enoughness, being enough to be in the room, it connects to confidence, it connects to your ability to show up and be seen and not apologize, have your voice at the table. And so I think the mindset component and being limited by hindering thoughts, even something as simple as, oh, I'm not a great public speaker. Or whenever I go to say something, I find that I choke in meetings. There are certain recurring narratives that come up with women, and sometimes very high-performing women as well. I think there is not a correlation between how well you perform in these narratives. And if we can look at rewriting those inner narratives, those stories is another way I like to call them, because it detangles the narrative from who you really are. So if we can work on that mindset component first, before or simultaneously as we get into communication training through behaviors, that can be really effective. The other two categories I will say that people struggle with is their voice. I think voice can be charged for a lot of people. I think some people don't like the sound of their voice. They don't like listening to recordings. So there's a sound component, but there's also an ability to fill the room with your voice. Can you speak up? Can you use your voice in a crucial conversation when it matters most to its fullest capacity? And that's where we get into elements of voice, the kind of the pedagogy of resonance and volume and pace. Those behaviors can be trained. We can learn to have a greater volume. We can learn to access a more grounded resonance. And the final category, Emma, I'll answer is, I think, connection to our bodies. I think I see a lot of clients who struggle with disconnection to their bodies, because so often we can be in an analytical space at work, right? It's all about data. We're thinking about outcomes. It's all very up here in our heads. But our voice and our presence emanates from our bodies. We are physical beings. And so if we can, through voice work, settle ourselves into our bodies, in our presence, that creates such a different energy, an energy of gravitas, an energy of comfort in our own skin. When we're in the room, that can make a huge difference. And so those three categories of mindset, voice, and body language are what I see that women especially need a reminder of connections to those things. And when there is that connection, oh, it's brilliant. People just soar, and it's a joy to watch that.
Yeah, it's like a light comes on inside them, isn't it? And they start really shining out in their true way. It's just gorgeous to watch. Yeah, I think it's really interesting. There's this idea that basically a belief is a thought you keep thinking. And I love that. It's like, because if we're continually thinking thoughts that are undermining ourselves, if we're thinking thoughts that are, I'm not good enough, I'm not smart enough, I'm not experienced enough, all those enoughness things that you were just talking about, then that becomes our narrative. It becomes a truth, like the truest of truths, but actually it's based in a feeling. It's not based in any fact whatsoever. And then that impacts, like you say, on our body language. And I did this brilliant exercise this week with a bunch of amazing women. And I just flashed up pictures of women in different positions, different poses. And they were instantaneous in their assessment of what was going on with that woman. Literally, they were like, all right, they were unprepared and they were instantaneous in their understanding. It's like, so we do this as human beings. We look at other people and we read their body language instantaneously and unconsciously, and we make a decision, like you say, about their competence, which has nothing to do with their ability to do their job. So unless we're really intentional about those thoughts and really intentional about the story that our body is telling, then we could be telling all kinds of stories to our audiences that we never, ever intended to. And that can have kind of negative consequences for our career and our perceived competence within our organization. So I think you're absolutely right. It's that mind, voice, body connections, and it really in that order that women struggle with.
Absolutely. And, you know, those narratives, I see also with clients that sometimes people don't know where to begin. They think, well, this is so deeply embedded. How do I begin to separate and rewrite this? And that's where the value of a coach comes in, because having an observer to walk you through and give you actionable steps to detangle, maybe reinsert some different words, and give you steps to start practicing on a minute-to-minute basis of shifting that mindset. That's where the transformation happens. So it kind of starts with awareness of, oh, there's that narrative that's unhelpful, and then application.
Yeah, absolutely. I often call that like the truth mirror. It's like we're just holding up a mirror and reflecting back the reality, not the feeling, and there is no judgment. It's like, and just holding that up and then just asking that question of, is that true? Does that happen all the time? You know, is that a fact or is that a feeling? Just those questions to kind of make somebody stop and break that cycle of that narrative of, oh, you know, I always do this wrong. Oh, they're going to ask me about that thing and I won't be able to answer that question. You know, that really is our job, is to hold up that truth mirror and go, hang on a second, you know, is that always true? Is that, you know, is there an alternative?
Yes, and I'm so glad that you used the word judgment, Emma, because I think that our cultures, whether you're in the UK, whether you're in the US, anywhere around the world, there is a pervasive feeling, I think, of judgment. And maybe especially for women. I think we can have times where we judge ourselves, we feel judgment from others. And looking at our relationship to judgment with those narratives, with our communication, the minute we start to step away from that, and the way you practice that is the minute-to-minute experience with a coach of stepping away from judgment. Then your creativity expands, possibilities expand. You start to embody your body and your voice and your communication in a whole new way. And it begins on the mindset level.
Absolutely. So I think, and I wonder what your opinion is on this. I feel that there's a definite correlation between effective communication and career advancement or progression, whatever that looks like to you. And it could be all kinds of things. What do you think about that? Do you think there's a connection?
Absolutely. And I think that's where my passion for the work comes in, because it's so exciting when doors open and you see results after communication work. And it really goes back to that element of perceived competence. So when we perceive that someone is competent through their body language, through the sound of their voice, the way they deliver, we are hardwired to automatically build trust with that person, to think of that person when new opportunities come up. So it is an exciting domino effect for career opportunities and advancement once we start embodying our leadership presence. It is almost like the route across the river of saying, okay, this is where I'd like to go. And I can work hard, I can be dedicated, I can put in hours, I can put in time. I think it's easy for a lot of women to say, well, if I just had more credibility, if I just had more training, if I was able to put in more hours. But actually, the secret of this is that it's leadership presence that creates that bridge to the other side. Because once you start embodying, yes, I am ready for this role. I will always be learning, but I'm ready today. I'm ready for higher pay. I'm ready for more responsibility. Your sort of energetic field changes. You know, I speak a lot about energy. Energy is a tangible thing, even though we can't see it. And once your energy changes, people notice that. And that's where opportunity meets career advancement.
I completely agree. And I think one of the things that's so important here is that what changes is trust. So when we see women begin to trust themselves, I know this stuff. I'm totally capable of this. And I can trust myself not only when it goes well, but when it doesn't go quite as planned, I can trust myself to pick up the pieces and carry on and sort it all out. When they really lean into that trust, then other people find it so much easier to trust them. And I think that is a significant change we see. And I think you're absolutely right on your second point, which is it isn't really about what we're doing, it's about who we're being. So if you can be that leader who can manage whether things are going brilliantly or not so brilliantly, if you can be the leader that manages difficult, complicated, nuanced conversations with ease and with credibility, it is so much easier for people to trust you. So it's not really about the actions we take. It really is about the energy we put into who we're being. And that is what makes the massive impact. And I think certainly for the women that I work with, the ones that really can make that energetic shift into being the leader they want to be, they're the ones whose career advance really, really quickly, rather than those that perfect the doing bit. That definitely helps, but it's just one small element of being seen as super credible.
Absolutely. And I'm so glad you brought up that element of flexibility in challenge, because I think, a mark of leadership presence is being able to trust yourself when things get sticky, and to know that you can meet those challenges when you are connected to your body, when you're connected to your voice. So the training moves to support you once you shift that mindset in the most challenging moments. It's so easy when days are kind of smooth sailing to say, oh yes, I can embody leadership presence that day, everything's going fine. But it's when companies going through transitions, the pandemic, challenging conversations with the boss, coworkers. There are so many messy situations that come up, but you inside yourself, you don't have to operate from mess. You can operate from groundedness.
Absolutely, because we can't prepare, right? There's no way you can prepare for everything. You can prepare for a presentation, you can prepare for, a difficult conversation, perhaps, not always. And so if you can't prepare, the only thing you can do is work on who am I being in this moment? How am I going to show up for this messy middle of whatever is going on? Because that is what's going to create impact, and trusting yourself to be okay in that. But unless you've done that mindset work that you were talking about before, it's really hard to embody really powerful communication in those moments, because that little narrative is going to come creeping back in and going, no, not you, not yet, you're not ready, and all of those kinds of things. So tell me, what advice would you give to women who struggle with the speaking up piece, the public speaking, on the presenting? They can do it, they're perfectly competent at it, they just probably don't enjoy it, and it's just like, it's a struggle. They lose sleep getting into it, and they criticize themselves afterwards. What would be your advice to do that with greater ease? Because I think that's what we're always aiming for, with greater ease. And this is always my sign of like, yes, we've done it, is enjoyment. They can come out the other side and go, actually, yeah, I quite enjoyed that.
Yeah. Which, how great. What a nice surprise when people find that they enjoy it. And I think for someone who is full on the spectrum of, oh, I really don't love this, letting yourself off the hook that if enjoyment happens, great. But I love that you said, ease is the bridge. We would love to operate with ease. That's an energy. My advice, well, I would say it's twofold. It is to begin first on a physical level to ground yourself in your body. When we perceive risk, so risk could be shown as, oh, I'm very visible in front of 200 people for this presentation. Risk could be, I'm in this challenging conversation and I'm feeling very nervous because I'm speaking to my boss and I need to tell him about this situation that we're having on our team. So risk can show up in many different ways. And even though we're biologically not being chased by a tiger, I think humans have such a visceral reaction to risk based on our lineage. Even though you're not being chased by a tiger at work, you are being in a very vulnerable position, and that feels like threat. And so my advice would be to begin to connect to your body through your breath. Yeah. Breathing before that moment, breathing in that moment, maybe even in the midst of a presentation, scheduling for yourself breaths in between slides. Breathing not only connects us to our voice, it opens up our channel to speak so that our voice comes out resonant and with volume and potentially with gravitas when we access that breath. But it also calms our mind. Breathing soothes our nervous system to say, we are safe. And in this situation where it feels like we don't have control, we can connect to safety. And it's through that physical in and out, inhalation and exhalation, that we do that.
Yeah, I think that's so true. The moment we start breathing deeply, we stop feeling vulnerable.
Yes.
Biologically, it's not possible to feel fear and breathe deeply. We can't do those two things together. They are an either or scenario. So, if we can breathe deeply, that fear, that sense of risk, that sense of vulnerability or exposure will start to decrease. Sorry,
Absolutely.
I agree on your second point.
Oh, no, absolutely. I'm so glad you mentioned it is a biological and physiological response. So you're helping yourself in this really powerful way. And the second element, Emma, I'll answer to that, is the mental component of how do you relate to being uncomfortable? And in my work, I speak a lot about making friends with nerves. That may seem like a radical concept of what does that even mean, to make friends with this feeling that feels so uncomfortable and that sends me into jitters and heat flashes and all of these things. But if we can start being in discomfort with non-resistance, I'm not even going to say ease at the first, but inviting it to the table. There's a sort of a great metaphor I like to use with that. It's like you're sitting at your kitchen table and something really uncomfortable is standing at your kitchen door. And you have the opportunity to say, come on in, have a cup of tea if you're in England, have a coffee if you're in the United States, and let me be curious about what this feeling is telling me. And is that true? Are there elements of being in discomfort that feels true? And what feels untrue? So it's kind of checking yourself to saying, this thing doesn't need to run my experience. I can make friends with it. I can have a relationship with discomfort. And when we can access that, we have new keys to opportunities, because so much of advancement is being in that zone of discomfort. You need to stretch, you need to grow. So if we can lean into that, our world opens up.
Absolutely. And that comes back to that trust piece again. It's like, I can trust myself to sit in this discomfort, this not knowing, and it's an opportunity to learn something. Because like you say, when you invite that fear in and you ask it questions, you're going to learn something useful and interesting. And I had a client the other day who had a narrative, and she realized, oh, it's not mine. That's my mum's. And it was just a kind of instantaneous. And then I'm like, what do you want to do with it now? She said, oh, I don't need it. And she literally just like, I can put it down over there. And it was gone, because she'd been holding this at bay for such a long time. But actually, it was nothing to do with her. It was a narrative that she'd collected along the way and never sat to analyze. And so she just carried on carrying it around. And then it was like, oh, gone, didn't need it anymore. Big shift. But it only came because she trusted herself to sit in that slightly uncomfortable, icky, I don't know, I don't really want to look at this thing over here. But when you do, super valuable.
Absolutely. This reminds me, I have a book that's very applicable to this sitting on my desk that I reference often. It's called Comfortable with Uncertainty. And it's by a woman named Pema Chodron. I don't know if you're familiar, but she is a Buddhist nun that lives in North America. And she's this I find very wise teacher. And a lot of the way I work with clients integrates elements of voice work, elements of leadership, and also elements of personal development, books like this, because I think there's so much wisdom to be gained from meditation, from practices that allow you to sit in discomfort. That's where the work happens. It happens outside the stage, so that when you are in that moment, when you are visible in front of everyone, you're prepared, you're ready.
Absolutely. talking of the stage, I mean, you obviously you spent a long time on the, I know it was an ice rink, but well, let's call it the stage, performing. Now, obviously, ice skating is non-verbal, right? You're not saying any words as such. You may be singing songs, but you're not necessarily communicating in the way that we do in business. So you must have learned a lot about how inherent that communication through body language, through facial expression is. I'd love to hear your thoughts on body language and how that impacts how we communicate as women, particularly.
My time with Disney was really interesting because it was a blend of technical skating, but also a little bit of acting. We were playing characters. And so Disney is so intentional about their brand. And we received this excellent expert training on how to convey through your skating the story. And so much of, I think, communication in business is about telling a story.
Yeah.
It's about connecting with your audience, not through data, not through analytics, but it's through cultivating a story. And what goes into powerful storytelling is your eye contact, your smile, your open stance, your gesture. All of those things directly translate to how someone receives a message. So it was this incredible education of honing my body language to tell a certain story that now I translate to helping professionals tell their story in business. You know, a great example is I was recently working with a group on this last week. When you have an intention, your body language needs to match that intention in order for the desired outcome to happen. Mm-hmm. If you say something that your words are not matching what's happening with your body language, that message is not going to land. I was working with a group where we were practicing, how do you say something and mismatch your body language? And then how do you say that same thing and match your body language? And it was so fascinating to see the effect of that in a group and how easy it was to have discord when those things don't match up. And that's the value of communication training, is that even when you have very high quality communication, there is always a level of how can I connect more? What else can I do to create openness, trust, and rapport in order to get something done, in order for an outcome to happen?
Absolutely, because we need that connection to what we're saying. We need a connection to the audience, and we need a connection to ourselves. And if we've got all of those three things and they're really nicely balanced, then we know that message is going to land. And when they're incongruent, when they don't match up, the audience is left kind of going, it was good, but they don't necessarily take the action, or they don't necessarily buy into that vision in the same way. And I think now we've reached a point where many businesses are essentially leading bunches of volunteers. I know we get paid to turn up, but we're so mobile, and we're so much more purposeful in the way that we live our lives. We can change who we work for, in the blink of an eye. And so as leaders in organizations, we need to be able to do that visionary storytelling with real gusto and with real intention, so that it lands with our audiences. It lands with these paid volunteers that we lead, and so that they want to stay and be part of our mission and not go somewhere else. So I think it's really, really important. Amazing. So what would be lovely would be to hear the domains with which, the pillars with which you approach your coaching.
I really approach coaching from a holistic level, where the whole person is sitting in a chair across from me on Zoom. And it's important, I find, to look at each element of each person. So that goes for voice, body language, and mindset. And I would say from my training, I really bring in an element of psychology. One of the things I loved about competition and then performance was the mindset component of how do you train yourself to operate consistently at a high level all the time, even when you're tired, even when you are stressed, when there are changing variables all the time, which is business. I mean, the changing variables, constant. And so I think what's unique about my entry into this work is I deeply understand processes of psychology that help you, elements from sports training that help you take one element at a time, that help you narrow your focus when you need it. Those all really are derived from sports training.
So it's a kind of way of it's a way of unpicking the overwhelm that we can often feel, especially in corporate and as in entrepreneurial life. There's so much stuff coming at you all the time. It's that ability to kind of go, okay, how do I tackle this? How do I tackle this from who I'm being, not necessarily from what I'm doing? I mean, you can have productivity tools and you can create lists, but it's really how am I showing up to deal with all of the things that are happening in front of me, and then how am I communicating my thoughts to the people around me? So would that be a good summary?
Absolutely. And then what advanced that to this further degree was my training at the Royal Central School. My master's, which Emma, you have as well. So we connect on that beautiful level of speaking the same language in our master's. It was all about how to create connection and an embodied voice. When I say embodied, how do you speak from a voice that feels authentic and feels like you? And adding that training, it was true voice pedagogy. It was looking at elements of volume, resonance, pitch, pace, all of that, but also how to take a page from acting, how to help the element of acting training and translating that to how do we communicate in business. So that was a big part of my study, is making that bridge, because actors are experts at using their voice. They are experts at creating an intention and communicating that intention, which actually is leadership. It's very similar to leadership. And so my training at Central was this added layer of translation from acting to the business world that's been incredibly useful and effective.
Yeah. And what I love about that is when we talk about acting and having trained in drama school, people go, oh, and you can see the kind of fear and the horror in their face. It's like, and I will often say to people, they say, but why acting? Like, acting is fake, right? Acting is about pretending to be somebody you're not. And I think it's really important to realize that good acting is not about fake. Good acting is about finding the truth within you and the connection to that character. So if the actor does not find the truth in that human being, the psychology behind that character, will look at that acting and think, well, that was terrible. That was so unbelievable. That really wasn't true. So they have found some degree of authenticity between a truth inside of them and a truth inside the character. And so that's what we're really trying to help people do, is what's the truth of this for you right now, for this message, for this audience, for this time in your business, and connecting to that, and then being able to really convey that with conviction to the audience. So it's really about finding truth and authenticity, not faking and pretending.
I love that. That was such a beautiful explanation of truth. And authenticity is so interesting in voice work and coaching, because I would say my definition of authenticity has really changed and expanded as I've done this work. I think there is this idea that authenticity is fixed. It's a fixed state where, for example, oh, no, I never wear the color blue. It's just not authentic to me. But let's say, this is just an example, if you go shopping and you find a fabulous blue dress that looks flattering and you feel great in it, and it happens to be blue, all of a sudden that becomes authentic for you. So in the sense of communication, we train behaviors in session that at first may feel unfamiliar. They may feel like they may not be authentic, because maybe you're moving from caved in shoulders to open shoulders. Maybe you're moving from a lower tone of voice to more volume. That may feel a little bit foreign at first. But if that behavior serves you to get where you want to go, all of a sudden your definition of authenticity and what feels authentic to you can expand, because you say, oh, I am someone who can have a voice in the room. I am someone who can show up with confidence in my posture.
Yeah.
So there's this fabulous talk from a professor named Termina Ibarra in London. I highly recommend it. That is her definition of authenticity, that it is a changing experience day by day, minute to minute, to what feels authentic to you at that time. And it's not a fixed state, it is ever evolving. And I deeply believe that in the work.
Me too. And that talk is amazing. So we're going to make another video and just talk about authenticity and what that means, because I think it's such an important topic, and it's something that's not really talked about enough. So yeah, we're going to dive into that deeper at another time. But I would love to hear your thoughts about how the work that we do, the work that you do, impacts not just business, because we talked a lot about business today, but how does it impact outside of business, women's lives?
This is one of my favorite things to share, Emma, because the work is powerful. Once you start making mindset shifts and claiming your voice, there is a ripple effect that happens in your life. I see this with clients where they will say to me, I delivered that presentation really well, but I also found that I was able to communicate more clearly at home. So there is a link between the work that we do to not just business, but how you show up in your relationships, in your friendships, in your, family, all of these different facets. It's exciting because you know that you're investing in yourself on a really powerful level when you engage in coaching to this degree.
I totally agree. I find that women create these, once their vision of themselves changes, of who they know that they really, really are, and they can authentically own that expertise, I find their boundaries become so much firmer. I want this, I don't want that. And then it's so easy to communicate from that very kind of intentional yes, no scenario. Or, I feel a bit neutral about that. So actually, I really don't mind about the outcome. But they're very clear then about what they want and where they want to go. And that really does have a massive impact on life. I would love to hear, as we begin to wrap up this session, do you have a favorite transformation for a client that you have worked with?
Oh, I love that question because there's several. I would say I had a client that I worked with for probably a 6-month period. So it was a very in-depth experience. And we were looking at all elements. We were looking at confidence. We were looking at being visible in the room, speaking up in meetings, speaking up in moments that it mattered most. And through the journey, this client actually left one role. She had a new opportunity come up for her at a really dream company. She was in marketing. She had a dream opportunity come up for her while we were in coaching. We prepared for the interview together. She nailed the interview and she received this role. And it was such a pleasure to be with her on this journey and watch the transformation happen, not from anything that necessarily I was doing. It was the work that she was putting in. And by the end of our 6 months, she was a different person. Her voice and who she was as a woman, as a leader, as a human being in the space, she was a different person. And I think that is why we do the work, is to be able to empower yourself on a really deep level so that new opportunities can come up. You can get recognition. There is higher pay. I mean, her world opened up in the sense of the work she was doing. She all of a sudden got to be on these exciting projects in this startup company that was very selective in who they chose and why. And I believe that it was the work that she did on her presence that became the right fit for this startup, because they were looking for someone who embodied that sparkle, and she unleashed it in our time together.
Amazing. I just love that. And isn't it interesting how many women go on to land dream jobs or become more visible or go off and do something really exciting? Like so many people go off and set up their own companies because actually really that's what they always want to do. I love seeing this transformation and women backing themselves and going, no, that's what I want. And yes, I trust myself to do it. And I'm going to communicate this to everybody that I know. I absolutely love those moments.
I do too. And it happens too on a micro level in coaching. So that's a really broad example. I had a client that I was working with that discovered through sessions that whenever she was communicating, she is a therapist, whenever she was communicating something that felt like speaking, it was about secrets. When she was talking to someone about speaking something that had been uncovered for a long time, she found that her voice dropped, that she got quiet. And these aha moments come throughout the whole coaching. This client said to me, oh my goodness, by thinking about my voice and how I show up, I realized that I was whispering when it came to uncovering something that had been not visible for many years for her client. And she realized that's not congruent with what I'm championing. I'm championing bringing something to light and seeing that with clarity. And so it was this huge opportunity for her to match her voice to what she was coaching, what she was guiding in someone else. And so these moments of transformation happen on a sometimes session to session basis. And she said to me, I think about the way my voice shows up when I deliver important things in sessions now. And that's transformed her practice.
Amazing. I love these micro and macro wins. Well, Margot, thank you so much. It's been absolutely delightful to talk to you. I am so proud and so excited to have you as part of our team. I literally can't wait for our clients to access the Influential Leadership Program and start coaching with you, because you're just going to bring so much value and so much transformation to them. I am delighted that you're joining us.
Well, Emma, thank you. Well, it is my honor and privilege. I just am so thrilled to be with your incredible team and can't wait to see what unfolds. And I'm just so excited to get into the work.
Amazing. Thank you.